gonna take us back a little bit. So way back in 2015, when we were getting started, we used this card. Anyone remember this card? We had it at all the events in the early days. Oh, this card, that card. Anyone remember that? Yeah. We thought we were so smart with this, like, brought home the outrage and the opportunity. The 4% statistic wasn't widely known. I remember the first time that I read it in a Babson study, and I was like, what? 4%? That's unbelievable. And as I story told it, and as all of us story told it over and over again, it got wings. And it started to be shared really widely because it was so outrageous. In retrospect, I can see now that this may not have been the best idea. We really cemented this idea of you don't get enough, it's not fair, you aren't funded because of bias. It became our story. It created a narrative that feels like a fight, oppositional energy. It's a pushing up against instead of a calling forward, kind of giving away our power. It reminds me of when we learned in Aotearoa, New Zealand, from the Maori, that they don't paddle towards the island, they pull the island towards them. Really different energy. I find this to be a consistent learning in my life over and over again. I have to learn this. The pathway to change is through creating an irresistible alternative, not fighting what is. And then we all learned over time that the 4% outcome isn't unique to the finance space. It is actually the percentage of women running the top 500 companies in the world, of women creative directors, of women plumbers. I mean, it's a result of the systems and structures we have in place, this 4%. There's something in it. So this is a story that we want to release, fixing anything. It puts us in a cycle of giving away our power, and it's a wasted, depleting energy suck. It goes something like this. Only 4% of funding goes to women. System. What's the business model for allocating more money to women and non-binary folks? Show us more data, etc. Yeah? Q study 55 million. All of our energy goes into the spin cycle to show the system that it shouldn't be the way it is. And all that energy, 9 years later, numbers are the same. We have all the data, the impact, the outcomes, and none of it has changed behavior because it's a systems issue. Anything operating in our current systems and structures keeps the results the same as they've always been. In order to change the way things are, we have to design and create new approaches. The beginning of our work was also intended to find the people who are rethinking how to do business, the new mindsets, the new models. But that narrative got a little bit lost, sort of subsumed in the money narrative. Just give us the money, it's our turn. But we don't want to just fund women and non-binary folk. That's not why we're here. We're here to transform our thinking and our being so we can create a better world together and remember that money is only one form of capital. By prioritizing the money narrative, it was sometimes harder to witness the power of our approach. We learned from Anastasia that we have fused all forms of capital together here. Trust capital, care capital, learning, relational capital. These forms have laid dormant, undervalued, well, actually not valued at all, for decades. As Maria Calabos-Sales from Australia brought the 7 forms of cultural wealth to our attention, we could see the impact of navigational capital that Jenny mentioned, social capital, resistant capital. By fusing them together and reorganizing all these assets, we started to create different conditions for all of us to thrive. The power of the collective started to create spillover benefits. Very geeky, Anastasia. Another way of looking at all the results of valuing so many different forms of capital is that we started to see expansive possibilities and unheard of outcomes. Very high payback rates for very early stage risky ventures. Jobs being created every year at $3,000 per investment. Founders feeling supported to do things their way. Organizing differently, aggregating all forms of capital opened up new opportunities. Alana didn't need to raise money to grow her business. Sherry introduced her to the bank's upper echelons of decision makers. Lauren helped her to create a training program, and voila, she had a 6-figure client and a pathway to growing her business focused on creating more empathy in the world. Sharing power and expertise and gifts with one another was energizing and disruptive. We weren't just disrupting power structures, we were becoming a source of power ourselves. And we're transforming undervalued soft capital into powerhouses of impact. Softening, that word. This is a journey from the head to the heart that Blue says is the longest voyage you'll ever take. That narrative got a bit lost over the, oops, where am I? Next page, sorry. I've heard from many of you that I've softened a little bit over the years. I feel that. It's the healing we can offer one another, the entrance into the sacred feminine, as Andrea taught us. When we started, we invited people to be radically generous. Some of you will remember, if you were here in the early days, sharing my mom's frustration with having to put the word radical in front of generosity, as if signaling that generosity itself wasn't enough, that we weren't enough. Oh yeah, I can feel that. I had to learn that lesson over and over, and Delilah and Tracy are here, the co-founders of We Are Enough. You'll hear about this later. By labeling our activity as radical generosity, we called forth something energetic. If it resonated with you, you joined us for a different experience. We welcome each other warmly. We're curious about each other's work. We actively listened to see if we could help, and it worked. We started to soften ourselves and one another with an underlying desire to experience ourselves differently. We've entered into an agreement with one another that we're here to practice new ways of being. It can be uncomfortable, sometimes scary, also joyful. And when we participate, we start the process of transformation that puts us into the zone of mystery. When you commit to doing things differently along with others, more possibilities open up for you. When I got back from my sabbatical, I started this new process of slowing down. Richard may disagree, but moving at the pace of life, I started to be more generous with myself. What if I was enough? What if I didn't have to lead everything, have the answer to everything, keep momentum going all the time? It's led me to a new practice. I put out the intention I have, and then I notice all the blocks, constraints, etc. Just notice them, let them go. And then I don't go and try and solve everything right away, which I used to do in my fix-it phase, roughly ages 2 to 58. I'm learning. I now pause after I set the intention, and then I story tell my intentions to whomever's in my calendar, whoever comes to mind, whoever I'm around, and what I've been experiencing is really wild. People end up saying, I can help with that. I know someone who can do that. That's really exciting. Can I add in this? And all of a sudden I have a team around me wanting to contribute to the thing that I dreamed up. So I've been wondering, has that been here all along? Was I just going too fast to notice all the support and care and resources and love that I was surrounded by? In this new way of being, I don't even have to ask for help. What I'm noticing now is if you just share what you're up to, people you meet in this community will contribute what they have to help make it happen. So what if we collectively let down our walls? I'm not ready, they're too busy, my work isn't enough, and we let others contribute to our story. I spent so many decades feeling alone and surrounded by people who are trying to change me, give me feedback I never asked for. And now I'm finally surrounded by you, the others, the ones who remind me every day that I'm not alone. I see the others around me, and I've slowly begun to receive from you, and I'm so grateful for you and your patience. Which brings me to witnessing, the golden temple in the sky for us humans. To be witnessed is such a gift. To know we're seen, to have people share what they see in us, it's so precious. In Prince Edward Island, We did some retreats as a pilot last year. We did a closing exercise that was so magical. We lit candles, of course. Sat in a circle, and one by one entered into the circle when it was our turn and listened to people witness us. Super uncomfortable sometimes. Jessica Keats went first when it was my turn and looked at me and said, "Admittance, admittance, admittance." And I thought, what does that mean? And she said, "Vicki, you admit things out loud that many people don't say. And when I hear it, it makes me think, what do I need to admit to myself?" I can still feel the impact of that witnessing. When we hold up the mirror to one another, we can see how magnificent and flawed and real and wonderful we are. I saw myself anew that day, and the ripples of admittance still sit with me. I'm always on my growth edge, so I'm like, what do I need to admit to myself now? What do I need to change in my story so I can actually be who I'm meant to be? So it's created a bond between me and Jess. I reach out to her all the time. What are you noticing? What's going on? When we're brave enough to share our perspectives with one another, it opens up this pathway for relationships to go deeper and for us to be seen. And if you want to be seen, you have to see others. That's the pathway in. Give to others what you want to receive yourself. At that same event, an activator who hadn't been engaged in the community before was debriefing with me about her experience. She said, "I looked around when I arrived and I thought, okay, I see about 4 or 5 people here that I'll likely connect with." And then over the next few days, she found herself drawn to everybody that was in her group. And at the end, she said, "Oh my God, I love them all." How do you do that? How do you know how to put us together? You did such a good job of curating. And I'm like, yeah, we didn't curate anything. We put out the invitation. This is what happens here, right? A lot of you have had this experience. We put out the invitation. We trust that people that are ready will show up, and they will be the right people. Part of the success here is our willingness and curiosity to stay open. When you do that here, you get to experience yourself and the world anew. It starts with your own willingness to let yourself be witnessed and to generously witness others. We're all going to get a chance to do this when we launch small pods in September, and you'll hear more about that after lunch. There we go. All right. A while ago, someone approached me and said she wanted to see more Black women in the community. What do I need to do that? Be on the board? How can I have that influence? And I said, invite them. You have that influence already. And Lorraine, where are you, hon? Lorraine invited in Juliet and Janice. Wave at them. Hello. And they brought in a group of Black entrepreneurs from Foodpreneur, and you're going to meet them. They just started a cohort. Things happen here because someone has the desire, they bravely share it out loud, and then magic happens. When the first cohort of ventures in Australia was all white, Carol Vale, I was sitting right beside her at a table, I'll never forget it. She shared her disappointment out loud. If this is the new model, where am I in it? And so we both got up on stage immediately and asked the audience if they would be willing to save at least one spot a year for Indigenous ventures in Australia, and they said yes. And this year we're funding an entire Indigenous cohort because of the voice vote. When George Floyd was murdered, Wakumi Douglas called me and said, what is this community going to do about it? Which birthed the Racial Justice Working Group. After the experience of doing my first land acknowledgement at the 2020 summit, spurred on by Tara Fraser and her daughter Kiana, who were very gentle with me because I was super fragile. I can't believe it now when I think back to it. Tara worked with us to launch weekly calls with Indigenous-led businesses to learn together and support through the Lift Collective. We just restarted these calls globally with Indigenous entrepreneurs and community members from across the world, which is really exciting. Inspired by Wakumi's leadership and witnessing the growing anti-Asian racism, Jessie Wong, everyone remember Jess? Yeah, she hosted a call where Chenny, Janice Fukakusa, and Suzanne and others shared their lived experience of being an Asian woman in the world, and it was incredibly powerful. Tanya and Julia launched the Queer Collective to build relationships and share their experience in a regular circle, adding in a Pride Story Slam event. There are dozens more examples of these, of people creating the support, the relationships, and the conditions they need to belong and to be fully themselves here. This community is what we make it. It's a work in progress. How we look now will look different tomorrow, and it will only look different tomorrow if you take action, and if we take action. Let's create our dream space. You'll notice while you're here today, there's a number of new perspectives being shared, scaling deep instead of scaling up, post-growth, liberatory joy, narrative codes, power with frameworks, and favorite Coralus moments. We're inquiring into our experiences, looking at ourselves from a lot of different angles so that we can actually witness ourselves anew and update our story. We're not the same community we were 9 years ago or even 5 years ago. So our story has to change to keep up with our evolution. If you ask 5 activators today what Coralus is, you'll get 5 different answers. It's always been like this. It's the elephant metaphor. You know, you touch the tusk or the foot. And in the conditioned way of the world, everybody wants a freaking one-liner. What is this thing? So I can explain it to my friends. But what if the mono-narrative is the last thing we need in this world? What if a wildly diverse set of perspectives, inputs, and dreams is exactly what creates a healthy, resilient ecosystem? That's what nature teaches us. A couple of days ago, I saw a post by Zach Bush saying that what if we humans have evolved from nature so nature can witness itself? Think about this when you're watching a sunrise or a sunset. Imagine that you're holding up a lens for nature to witness itself. What a different energy to be in. So now take that into our experience here. What if we're here to hold up the mirror to one another so we can witness our own glory, our own magnificence? Because it's only when we bring our gifts and our dreams into focus that we can create the future we want. 2 more slides. I'd like to end with magic and mystery. So let's hear a story of magic. Pictured here are Patrice, Wendy, and Bella, who are here with us in spirit, but not in the room. We filmed a video earlier this year, which will be up online tomorrow, telling the story of how Wendy and Bella from Dragonfly Ventures loaned Patrice money to buy out the VCs who invested in her. This is a totally impossible thing to have happened. Let me explain it. Patrice took on an investment because she wanted to grow her business. This happens all the time. People sell a portion of their company to investors so they can access capital to grow the business. What often happens, however, is that many people find themselves in something they didn't understand. Did I sign up to have to grow this fast, to expand this quickly? We often don't know that. It's not for us until we're in it. Patrice came to me and said, it's not working for me. Really stressed. And I said, what do you want? And she actually had an answer, which is pretty unique because it's hard to, if someone asks you right now, what do you want? Can anyone answer that? It's like pretty tough, right? You have to be super centered. So she told me what she wanted. And immediately, this is what happens for me, I get a flash, go talk to Bella. So because I knew that Bella and Wendy had invested in this venture fund. And so I called them and told them that Patrice was unhappy. And they are here to use their capital to create the conditions for entrepreneurs to get their dreams out into the world that are really needed. And they ended up loaning her the money to buy out the VC, and it was like their money at the VC. So, make sense? Like, you know? I just want to underscore how like super rare this is, and if anyone asked you if that was possible, you'd be like, no, that's not possible. But it's part of what happens here when people are here to do the right thing by one another, to care for one another, sharing the gifts they have in abundance, freed of habitual ways of operating, open to doing things differently. Let's enter into the mystery of the incredible leadership duo of Kate Bazar and Rebecca Perkaski from New Zealand. They innovated the world's first home compostable courier packaging so that we could stop the obscene amount of accumulation of waste in the world. It was a truly transformational product, but they saw the accumulating plastics in the ocean that was just growing exponentially, and they're like, we're not doing enough. How do we go back to the drawing board? And as they learned about the root cause of reducing waste, they realized that plastic pollution aggregated in rivers and waterways, mostly in impoverished communities, before it entered the ocean. So they thought, what if we could actually stop it from entering the ocean in the first place, and then use the pollution as the source of creating the packaging? And Polastic was born. And as they brought that product to market, they needed money to scale. Now, you would think that investors would be excited about this approach, because as they scale, they're healing the planet and they're remunerating those who are affected by pollution. But guess what? Investors didn't like it because it adds a complication to the model. Just go use raw materials, they said. Why add this whole other element? And it wasn't just one investor saying this. My dear, dear friend who departed recently, Suzanne Beagle, was like one of the most connected people on the planet for investing. And so I called her and she goes, well, did they talk to so-and-so? And did they talk to so-and-so? And I said, yeah, they did. She goes, this story is so completely unbelievable. Let me help. And we spent almost a year introducing them to everyone. And they got the same thing from everyone. So they stepped back and thought, if we want to move forward, we have to change our story. So what if there is a path forward for us without raising money? The only way to do that is to get to profitability. So they stepped back, and there's like, just for people here, like what you need to unload out of yourself to be able to change yourself in mid-thing is really tough, right? So they managed to drop their story of having to go with the high growth companies in the world. Because when you want to scale, you think you have to partner with the Fortune 100s, 500s, but like all they care about is price. And so where is it working? Follow the energy of that. And they managed to figure out how to stabilize their business. And now they are set to share their recipe of how they do this. So take the plastic pollution. Here's the recipe. Go use this to create your packaging. They're going to give it to the industry to seed an ocean cleanup economy. They're working to open up a factory so no more plastics will ever be used in packaging, which takes away the demand for oil products. They're here to transform the system for the benefit of us all. This is the kind of transformation we're here to finance at Coralus. It's a labor of love. It's a labor of transformation. It's a labor of care. It's so much more than building a successful business. And the pathway to get there has been super winding and mysterious. At every step of the way, as Chenny's one of these people too, like you're out there trying to transform systems. When you see behind the curtain what's actually happening, when you see how we're spending money and extracting, it's hard, right? It's one of the things, even just building this community together. Janice Fukakusa, who was our board chair for a while, I'd say, oh, did you see what just happened with this thing? These people got money to do this, and da-da-da, and they're like so traditional. And she's like, Vicki, keep focusing. Don't look at that. Keep doing your thing. And it's hard because you see injustice all the time, and you have to just not suck into it, right? Because it takes you down. So this is a lot of the work that I see happening here with founders. It's a labor that needs to be remunerated. It's a labor that needs to be recognized because it's so, so challenging. So I just wanted to thank all of you because we've all been part of creating the conditions for this magic and mystery to unfold. We are witnessing together that literally anything is possible here in this community if we put ourselves in the pathway of transformation and trust. If you can dream it, we can all make this happen. Thank you. I'd just like to have some silence for a couple minutes. We just listen to the song, the words. Just let that all sink in. And then Andrea will be back. Thanks.